I wasn't expecting to make another one of these videos, but as soon as it started to do well and the comments started to flow in, I knew I had to. There were so many films I missed, so many cinematographers who weren't mentioned, and so many comments calling me out. Now, this video is again going to be split into 3 parts, being black and white cinematography, colour cinematography, and contemporary cinematography, with all 3 parts being a mix of films that I feel are important and films that you feel are important, some of which I've only had a chance to watch recently. Again, this is all my opinion and films that have helped me on my way to becoming a DP, and this isn't a list of the best looking films of all time. So, when I say black and white cinematography, all I mean by that is these are important films that just happen to be devoid of colour. I just couldn't think of a better way to split this video into 3 parts. So, as for the films, we have Seven Samurai, The Seventh Seal, 8½, Persona, and Manhattan. Starting off with Seven Samurai, I'll admit it's not my favourite film. However, the cinematography is something that continuously blew me away. But what else do you expect from Kurosawa? Now, the dynamic camera movement is probably my favourite aspect of it and the reason it's been included in this list, but also the composure and placement of warriors makes for an incredibly interesting watch from a cinematography standpoint, let alone the storytelling one. Now, The Seventh Seal is not only one of the most influential Bergman films from a pop culture standpoint, but also one of the more visually striking ones, especially from his earlier days. The stark black and white visuals, strong shadows, deep blacks and inventive framing all make for an important and influential watch, and as with any Bergman, it will stay with you on set. 8½ has possibly the most famous frame in a film I'll talk about today, but I'm more interested in Venanzo's use of shadow and silhouettes. The way he created mystery with suspense is inspiring, the framing of the characters makes me think of what I could do in my own work, and the subtle use of frames within frames may even be on par with In the Mood for Love. I think it's safe to say that Persona is one of the most visually striking films of all time. Just the way Sven Nykvist used shadow, perspective, and just how he framed the human face. It stays with you since the moment you watch it, and whenever you find yourself framing a person, you'll think back to it. Also, the inventive use of shadows and how the light falls to create silhouettes is masterful. A film that you might have not expected me to mention today is Manhattan, but I think it makes a strong case for one of the most beautiful black and white films ever made from a cinematography standpoint. Gordon Willis's use of shadow is a masterclass in and of itself of what needs to be shown and what doesn't. The way he's photographed Manhattan is going to stick in my mind whenever I'm doing establishing shots, and the low-key mood when walking around the museum showcases the importance in subtle lighting. To juxtapose that section with colour, let's look at some films that are the reason we use colour the way we do today. So, we have Black Narcissus, The Conformist, Cries and Whispers, Apocalypse Now, and Once Upon a Time in America. I've watched quite a few older films, but one's use of colour reigns supreme above the rest, and it's Black Narcissus. The vibrant use of colour stands out amongst other films today, let alone films from the 40s. It was also shot by one of the most important cinematographers and directors in British history and the history of film, Jack Cardiff, but I think it is the early use of colour that really makes this film an important watch. Oh, and the sets they painted were incredible. I had to include Storaro in here at some point, and what better film than The Conformist? I can just show you this page of stills and a couple of clips, and it's obvious that it's one of the most beautifully striking films of all time, notably the use of shadows, composition, and of course, that colour palette. On to Cries and Whispers though, here we have in my opinion one of the best uses of colour in film. It completely blows you away when you watch it and realise that it all works so well together, but it's also a really strong thematic choice. But it's also Bergman, so you have the strong storytelling, incredible performances, and it's really just a must-watch film. When it comes to war films, Apocalypse Now is not only one of the strongest from a thematic sense, but it's also one of the most visually beautiful ones. Now, it's another Storaro, but it really couldn't be more different. Yet again, I'm going to mention the use of silhouettes, colour, and shaping the light. Now, I think if you're going to watch any film from today's list, it should either be this or The Conformist. It took me a very long time to get around to Once Upon a Time in America, and it was the almost 4-hour long runtime putting me off, but I'm here to tell you to watch it now. There's even an intermission at around the 160-minute mark, so you can split the film into 2. But about the cinematography, I can't think of a more deserving epic to include in this list. The depth in the lighting, use of shadows, especially with the hats, is all amazing to see, but above all, it's just a breathtaking watch. I wasn't too sure what to name this category, so I'm just going to go with contemporary, because the films here, whilst they span 4 decades, showcase an incredible use of lighting, colour, movement and placement, those films being Cinema Paradiso, Fallen Angels, Amelie, There Will Be Blood and The Tree of Life. To go in order, let's talk about Cinema Paradiso, arguably the most beautiful film about the love of cinema ever released, but that isn't why I included it. The cinematography showcases why we juxtapose time jumps in film, but also a strong use of unique lighting, framing that speaks to the audience in words can't, for example with frames within frames and movement. Now, in a completely different yet equally as important cinematic style, we have Fallen Angels, and in the same realm that There Will Be Blood is raw, this is raw, but with a much more unique style. The flowing camera, bold colours, wide angles, as well as throwing some black and white in there, all make it a staple of contemporary Asian cinema. When it comes to Amelie, I truly can't think of a better modern example of the use of colour. Less of the use of movement and composition, as whilst interesting is a bit more generic. The use of colour though is absolutely spectacular. It invokes emotion, creates an interesting frame, makes you ask the question of why they chose it, and all without feeling overwhelming. When it comes to colour cinematography, I truly believe this is up there with Black Narcissus and Cries and Whispers. There Will Be Blood was up against No Country for Old Men and the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, both at the Oscars and in this video, but I can say I chose it because of the rawness of Robert Elswit's work, and it felt as though it perfectly matched that of Daniel Day-Lewis's performance. Now, that's not to say No Country or Jesse James didn't though. But what makes it an important watch? Well, you get a first-hand experience of a cinematographer throwing you into the world of a character without holding anything back. I mean, I'm not sure what else to say, because if there's one film of the list that I think everyone's watched, it's this one. I was slaughtered for not having Lebesky in the last video, and fair enough. So for this I couldn't leave out The Tree of Life, and it was hard to pick just one, but The Tree of Life I think is his best work. Now, I love Children of Men and Birdman, every one of his films really, but The Tree of Life, in the most unpretentious way possible, is more of a work of art. It's Lebesky where he is most comfortable. Natural light, wide lenses, flowing camera movement, and whilst we know he didn't create this look, he certainly mastered and popularised it. There's no doubt that I yet again missed a lot of films. Once Upon a Time in the West, Casino, Mirror, The Colour of Pomegranate, but I just can't include everything and still make this video as compact as I want to. If this video again takes off in the same manner, I'll be back with a part 3, so if there are any major ones I missed, let me know. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Notice if you did have a recommendation for an analysis, leave them below. Thanks so much for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time. Bye!